The call came into a standard emergency dispatch center, where operators are trained to handle reports of crimes in progress. Instead of reporting an active incident, the caller described a future event with specific details about a location and a potential victim. This type of predictive call represents an extremely rare anomaly in emergency response systems, which are designed to react to current situations. The operator faced the challenge of determining whether this was a credible threat or a false report, with limited information available. Unlike typical emergency calls that describe ongoing violence, this call presented information about an event that had not yet occurred. The dispatch protocol had to adapt to this unusual situation, balancing the need to prevent harm against the possibility of mobilizing resources unnecessarily. This incident highlights how emergency systems, while optimized for reactive response, must occasionally handle proactive prevention scenarios. The verification process for such calls involves cross-referencing available information while maintaining operational security. This incident represents a rare category within true crime and emergency response, a pre-crime warning with specific, credible details. Unlike psychic visions or anonymous tips about vague future possibilities, this warning contained actionable information that authorities could verify. The case raises profound questions about intent versus action and when intervention becomes necessary. Law enforcement agencies have protocols for assessing threats, but credible pre-crime warnings present unique challenges. The thin line separating a threat from an action becomes critically important in these situations. Such cases force examination of how authorities distinguish between concerning statements and imminent danger. Emergency response systems are designed to react to events, but pre-crime warnings require proactive measures. This type of incident demonstrates the complex balance between preventing harm and respecting individual rights. The 911 call originated from a residential neighborhood, creating an immediate sense of urgency due to its proximity to potential targets. The time between the call and the predicted event was critically short, leaving law enforcement with minimal response time. This compressed timeline transformed the situation from a standard threat assessment to an immediate operational concern. The information provided in the call contained specific details that elevated it beyond a general threat. Law enforcement protocols treat such specific, time-sensitive warnings as actionable intelligence, requiring immediate response. The call's content indicated a clear potential for violence, triggering standard procedures for credible threats. This classification meant resources were mobilized under established protocols for imminent danger situations. The combination of residential location, short time frame, and specific warning created a scenario requiring rapid, coordinated action. The call contained three specific elements: a location, a potential victim, and a stated intention of harm from a named individual. The language used was declarative, not hypothetical, indicating immediate planning rather than a general threat. This type of specific, actionable information typically triggers a higher priority law enforcement response compared to vague or anonymous threats. The response involves verifying the credibility of the threat and assessing the immediate risk to the named individual. Standard procedure includes attempting to locate the caller and the potential victim based on the provided details. The urgency is determined by the specificity of the plan and the perceived capability of the named individual to carry it out. This contrasts with cases where threats are ambiguous, lack concrete details, or are deemed non-credible upon initial screening. The law enforcement response to a credible, specific threat is a multi-step process focused on intervention and prevention. The dispatchers and officers faced a critical decision: assess the risk in real time. Given the specific details provided in the call, they treated the predicted event as imminent. This type of response protocol is standard when information suggests a crime is about to occur, not after it has happened. Units were immediately dispatched to the location mentioned. Their primary objective was prevention, to intervene before any harm could take place. This contrasts with a typical investigative response, which focuses on gathering evidence after an event. The urgency stemmed from the call's specificity, which elevated its credibility for rapid action. Such preventive measures are a standard, though high stakes, part of emergency response protocols. Officers arrived at the scene and made contact with the individual identified as a potential perpetrator. Their intervention occurred at a precise moment that investigators later determined was critical. This timing is documented as having interrupted a situation that was actively escalating. According to official investigative reports, the trajectory of events was moving toward lethal violence. Such interventions represent a documented pattern in law enforcement, where timing is a decisive factor in outcomes. The outcome underscores how a single, timely action can alter the course of events, documented in official records. Evidence secured at the scene supported the premise that an attack was being prepared. This evidence typically includes physical items, documentation, or digital traces that indicate planning and intent. Such findings shift the narrative from random chance to deliberate action, which is a common pattern in criminal investigations. There is significant public misconception about this case. It is often framed as a psychic event, or a bizarre coincidence, which it was not. This mischaracterization is a frequent issue in high-profile cases, where complex evidence is simplified into more sensational but inaccurate narratives. The distinction is crucial. One involves unverifiable supernatural claims, while the other is grounded in documented, physical evidence. Understanding this boundary helps separate credible theories from speculative fiction in real-world investigations. The caller possessed direct knowledge of the perpetrator's plans, a critical piece of information in the investigation. The exact nature of their relationship remains undisclosed, fueling public speculation about their connection. This lack of public record is common in active or sensitive cases, where authorities withhold details to protect the investigation or individuals. The caller's long-term psychological motivations cannot be stated with certainty, a typical challenge in behavioral analysis. Such uncertainty often arises because internal motivations are complex and not always evident from external actions or statements. This leaves a gap in the narrative, where known facts about the event meet the unknown reasoning behind the warning. The call that prevented a murder presents a psychological puzzle about the caller's identity and motives. The caller could have been a reluctant accomplice experiencing a crisis of conscience. Alternatively, they might have been a frightened third party who witnessed concerning behavior. Such interventions are documented in criminology, where individuals with partial knowledge alert authorities. The call's effectiveness in solving the crime before it happened highlights the critical role of timely information. However, the full personal story behind that decision remains private, known only to the caller. This creates a gap between the known outcome and the unknown human motivations that drove it. The case underscores how a single, anonymous decision can alter the course of events. This case diverges from typical crime narratives where investigators arrive after a completed act. Law enforcement intervened before the planned crime could be executed, creating a distinct legal scenario. Proving criminal intent without a completed act presents unique evidentiary challenges compared to post-crime investigations. The procedural mechanisms differ significantly from solving a murder where forensic evidence is already present. This scenario represents a critical study in threat assessment methodology and prevention. The legal framework for pre-crime intervention requires establishing clear patterns of intent through documented evidence. Unlike traditional investigations that reconstruct past events, this case focused on preventing future harm. The distinction between intervention and investigation highlights different approaches to public safety. For emergency services, this case underscores established protocols for taking threats seriously, particularly those containing concrete details. The see something, say something principle is validated here, but with a crucial operational caveat. Specificity saves lives. Vague warnings present significant challenges for response teams, as they lack actionable information for intervention. Detailed information, by contrast, allows for precise and targeted intervention by authorities. This distinction is a key lesson in public safety and emergency management protocols worldwide. The mechanism relies on transforming general awareness into specific, verifiable data that can be acted upon. The ethical lesson here is clear. If you have specific knowledge of planned violence, you have both a moral and legal responsibility to report it. This principle applies across various contexts, from workplace threats to community safety concerns. Many reporting systems are designed to protect anonymity, addressing a common barrier that prevents people from coming forward. This mechanism functions similarly to confidential tip lines used in criminal investigations worldwide. The practical aspect is straightforward. Reporting provides authorities with the opportunity to intervene before harm occurs. This process relies on credible information, not speculation, to be effective. Understanding this pathway demystifies the process and emphasizes its grounded, procedural nature. It transforms a daunting ethical dilemma into a manageable civic action. This case demonstrates that such an action is not an overreaction. It can be the definitive factor that prevents tragedy. It ultimately shifts the focus from forensic investigation to preventative action. The most efficient solution to a crime is to stop it from ever occurring. This principle is supported by crime prevention models that prioritize early intervention over reactive measures. And this 911 call stands as a documented, real-world example of how that principle can work. Such calls create a critical bridge between public vigilance and official response systems. They represent a practical application of situational awareness in everyday life. This approach contrasts with purely investigative methods that begin only after harm has been done.